Israel's war on Gaza is set to shape an event the world will be watching very closely this year: America's race for president. Joe Biden's unconditional support for Israel has alienated constituents in key areas of the country. The question is, will voters abandon Biden in November? I'm Anelise, Borges, and this is The Stream.
And all of those congressmen who failed to see our humanity today and who failed to hear our voices today, that we will not see their names on the ballot next year, and we will not hear them when they come calling upon us next year.
I can't hear what you're saying. Well, thank you. Whatever you're saying, I'm going to say I can't hear you.
Support for Israel has been a safe political stance in American politics for decades. But voices disavowing, quote, Genocide Joe are growing louder. Could these votes swing this year's presidential election away from Biden? And what other options do voters actually have? To help us answer those questions and more, here are our guests today. Saba Saed, a student and activist who's joining us from Lansing, Michigan. Tamara Nasser, a political activist in Charleston, South Carolina, and Amer Zahr, an author, comedian, and activist joining us from Dearborn, Michigan. Thank you all so much for taking part in this conversation today. Saba, I want to start with you. You are a young American voter. You're also Palestinian. So you're obviously witnessing the brutal killing of your people from thousands of kilometers away, and with everything that the U.S. has to do with this story. How do you feel today?
Hello, thank you for having me. First of all, I'm quite honored. And to answer your question, I don't know how to feel necessarily, because it seems as if, you know, us as Palestinians, or even as Palestinian-Americans or Arab Americans, we're told how to feel a certain way, where we can't be upset with Joe Biden because we don't want to throw off the elections and not have that, you know, have it be like a Democratic Party win. But then on the other hand, as well, we're still going through the emotions of watching a genocide and our families back home be murdered and killed, and also like actively realizing that as a young woman right now, looking 10 years into the future, if this doesn't stop, that there'll be a lot less Palestinians carrying our blood and our heritage and our culture. So it's a quite emotionally conflicting like topic, in a sense, that the best way is to kind of be emotionally like neutral about it, so you can proceed to do more.
I imagine how hard it is, right, to detach your emotions right now. Tamara, how about you? And how much of this crisis is now the focus of your activism, for example?
I would say it's the main focus. I mean, I think it's really hard to see anything past what's going on currently. We're 100+ days into a genocide that we're watching from our screens, and having such an emotional connect to the land and the people, but not having the ability to physically do anything, and just watching it like miles away is incredibly disheartening. It's really hard to analyze like what's going to happen in the future for an election when there's like a current genocide happening. So it has taken all of our focus here, and we're not going to stop until a permanent ceasefire is called, and that's just the minimum. We need to continue working until there's an end to the occupation.
Amer, Arab Americans living in Michigan have traditionally been reliable, faithful Democrats. I mean, Biden carried over 75% of the vote where you are in Dearborn back in 2020. Can you tell us more about what you're hearing and seeing around you right now in terms of the abandoned Biden campaign?
Well, thanks for having me, and especially thanks to the two other guests who have been standing up and interrupting Biden whenever he tries to be somewhere.
Yeah,
and talk
we'll get
about
to that
things.
later. You ruined the surprise, but anyway.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. That's my job. So let me just say this. You know, Arab Americans in Michigan, especially, we've never really been a partisan community. In 2000, we voted for George W. Bush, and then when he invaded Iraq, we voted for John Kerry, and then in 2008 and 2012, we voted for Barack Obama because his middle name is Hussein, and then in 2016, a lot of people didn't vote for Hillary Clinton because of her support for Israel. And in 2020, we voted for Biden because Trump was so racist. So we're not really wed to one party or the other. Yes, we voted more Democratic lately, and we voted overwhelmingly for Biden. But the movement is real, and I've never seen anything like it in all my years doing electoral political activism work here in Dearborn and in the Arab American community around the country. I've never seen the energy the way it is now to basically tell Biden that we're not voting for you under any circumstances, and we don't care what the alternative is. We don't care. We know Trump. We've seen Trump. We're very familiar with who Trump is. And if we are telling you that we don't care that Trump is the alternative, that should tell you a lot about how we're feeling. Instead, the only messages we get from the White House are, look, you know, Trump banned you, so I'm not going to ban you. So trust me, I'm better. Or Biden's press secretary saying when he comes to Michigan, his message to Arab voters will still be that Israel has a right to defend itself, because they think that we have nowhere to go. They think that we're going to, by default, have to come back to them. They think we're going to forget. And our message is that the lives of our people and the blood of our people is to value. We will not forget.
It's quite interesting. You bring some very interesting points here, but do you think ultimately Joe Biden is listening to any of this? I mean, words like Genocide Joe, do you think his team is aware of the strength of this movement?
Well, they're aware, right? Because they know that there's no path to his presidency without coming through Michigan. Last week, they tried to send some campaign people here to meet with Arab American leaders. They were rebuffed by them. Now this week, they're sending some higher officials, like it looks like they're sending Samantha Powers, the head of USAID, or some other national security advisors, and hopefully they get rebuffed again. I mean, look, there is no sense in meeting with the Biden administration until at least the bombs stop falling, but we have so much more to ask. And frankly, it's irredeemable at this point in my eyes and in the eyes of most Arab Americans. You cannot stand up there and lie about beheaded babies. You cannot stand up there and say Palestinians are lying about how many of us are dying. You cannot stand up there and keep saying if there were not an Israel, we'd have to invent one. You cannot continue this blind support for Israel, which is not only affecting him, it's affecting other Democrats because they don't want to get out in front of the president. It's affecting the image of Democrats everywhere. And we've said enough. Enough. We're not dealing with this anymore. We don't care what the alternatives are.
Saba, you wanted to weigh in.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to add that I do think that the abandoned Biden movement is definitely getting to him just because of the switch in the way he's talking now about us and making his tweet. I don't remember it word for word, but saying something about Dearborn, Michigan, and that after that Wall Street article came out calling Dearborn the jihad capital of America, he came out saying something about that, and it wasn't till the abandoned Biden movement kind of picked up a lot that he wanted to visit Dearborn as well. So it's quite offensive that he thinks we're that dumb and that we're in that awe of him, that we are seeking his attention in any type of way, he could throw us a bone, when we are Arab, we're Americans as well, and you as president represent all Americans. So you're not doing us a favor by coming and meeting with us. You're doing your job. So, and I think that he expects a big reaction out of us and being so kind and democratic of you, Genocide Joe.
You made some very interesting points online as well. I mean, you went viral in an interview you gave on CBS. We have a clip of that interview, and we want to share with our viewers, and then I'll get your reaction.
Saba, you said reproductive rights are a huge factor for you, but that you probably won't vote for President Biden.
I think it would be hypocritical of me to use reproductive rights as a way to justify voting for Biden when Biden is aiding and sending military aid to Israel, which is airstriking Gaza and blocking humanitarian aid, leading to women there who are pregnant, either getting C-sections without anesthesia.
So you linked this very American issue to the reality of thousands of women in Gaza. Can I ask you the response you got, especially online?
I was reading through the comments and I was quite surprised. They were like, I agree with her. And then this other person, they posted, how do you talk to this voter? And I was scared by the reaction on those. I was like, I'm gonna like people are gonna be saying mean things and stuff like that. But if it wasn't for that person saying that, that video would never have gone as viral as it is. And that's when people are starting like, you listen to her. She's not saying anything wrong. You listen, all these things. I had a few people that were like saying some not very nice things. But at the end of the day, I think of it as flattery that you're taking time out of your day to find me, listen to what I say, increasing the engagement on that and replying on top of it. And you feel so entitled to disagreeing with me because you don't want to agree that everyone should have equal rights, not just the Americans, that you feel the need. You get so angry that you want to type it out in my comments, like, or anything. There were only a few that were like mean, but.
And in any case, again, you brought this issue to the forefront of a very important conversation about the campaign. Tamara, some may remember you as well. I mean, Amer just already ruined my surprise here. If people don't remember you, they will now. But some may remember you from a protest during Joe Biden's campaign speech in Charleston, South Carolina. For those who don't, here's the moment Tamara interrupted Joe Biden at Mother Emanuel Church. Take a look.
The truth is under assault in America. As a consequence, so is our freedom, our democracy, our very country, because without the truth, there's no light. Without light, there's no path from this darkness.
If you really care about the lives lost here, then you should honor the lives lost and call for a ceasefire in Palestine. Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
That's all right. That's all right. That's all right. That's all right. That's all right.
Tamara, can I ask you about the response that you got, not only inside the church, because that was one response, but then outside and online?
The initial response that we had received in that church was not very reflective of the solidarity that we have been seeing globally.
The people shouting for more years.
Because as a Black church, like Marcus has said this multiple times, he says, like, I've never seen that many like white people in a Black church. And if you pay attention to the video, it's actually like white members of the audience that started the chant in the initial response that we had received after calling for a ceasefire. And I think that this is important to highlight, that there is so much intersectionality between so many systems of oppression, but also movements of liberation. And that's why globally, the response that we have received has been supportive, because everybody recognizes that this genocide is wrong, and they stand in solidarity with the Palestinians to end the apartheid regime and the occupation.
Amer, Biden answered the protest that day. He said, and I quote, that he was quietly working with the Israeli government to get them to reduce significantly their campaign, I guess. There were some words missing there in his speech, but and for Israel to leave Gaza. Is that still flying? Do people believe that the U.S. is actually negotiating towards that right now?
Look, I mean, we're not stupid. We understand that the power of the U.S. presidency and the nature of the relationship between the United States and Israel, and especially Joe Biden, means that he could stop all of this with one phone call, and he chooses not to. you know, the hypocrisy. I mean, it's so beautiful what Tamara and our allies did down there in Charleston, because you know, I don't know if they picked that moment, but it was poetic, because right as Joe Biden was saying, where there is truth, there is light, that's when he got interrupted. I mean, he was being so hypocritical on stage with the words that were coming out of his mouth. And let's be honest, when he has really said what he felt, we have heard him. When he said that he didn't believe the numbers coming out. I mean, on October 25th, he literally said we were lying about dying. I mean, this is what he believes about us. He said that he's angry that this happened because it derailed his efforts to normalize relationships between Saudi Arabia and Israel. I mean, he is fully behind this operation. And yes, it has turned out to be a political hot potato for him. And so maybe you might see some of his rhetoric changing. You know, he came out and denounced the jihad article that came out from the Wall Street Journal. But like Saba said, that's just doing his job. By the way, I did the research. I live in Dearborn, where we have about 60% of the residents here are Arab Americans. And if anyone is the jihad capital, it is us. On the voter registrations, we have like 46 people named Jihad. We have like 8 people named Jihad with other spellings.
All right.
I mean, you know, I mean, there's no way to deal with these guys other than pointing out how ridiculous it is the way when they say things about us. I mean, there is only anger and hypocrisy to be shown.
I want to ask you all, I'm assuming as of now, Joe Biden doesn't have your vote. My question is, can he still turn this around? Is there any chance you guys would still vote for Joe Biden this year? Saba, can I start with you?
Yeah, I got asked this question multiple times, and I feel like I came down to my answer. Now, I think that first step would be calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, and then the release of, you know, within that ceasefire comes like Palestinian hostages release and the Israeli hostages release, and then for Joe Biden to still use that billions and billions of dollars, but instead of having it going to Israel, actually putting it into Gaza to build to build it back up, because it's gonna take good money. And if he claimed about caring and doing what's best, then I'm sure it would not be hard. Since he surpassed Congress multiple times to send billions, I'm sure he can do it again to send it to Gaza and fix that. And then after that is lifting the siege, working on ending the occupation, implementing a plan within the 4 years to implement ending the occupation. And then actually, once that plan is set in stone and it's legally binding, he steps down.
Wow.
And then finds another person.
Right. Tamara, your take.
I think Saba said it beautifully. A permanent ceasefire is a minimum. And we, once again, as Arab Americans and Muslims and or Palestinians who share these marginalized identities, are once again being pushed to the ground line of political conversations. And we're only ever highlighted when it's beneficial for the president and his campaign to once again garner votes in this next election. But a ceasefire is a minimum. Asking the United States to no longer fund a genocide or an apartheid regime is a minimum. And once again, we are only asking for a minimum. So it is a start, but I think that this conversation highlights this sort of egocentrism that already exists within American politics, because we can't really think about the way this genocide is going to impact Biden's vote in the future when there's an act of genocide that's happening right now. I mean, it's really hard to see anything past the death that is surrounding us and Palestinians that are dying by the thousands, and 100 days into a genocide where bombs are continuously being dropped and are still being dropped. And he's not saying anything, but he's only addressing it as it is affecting him, a white man who directly benefits from the imperialist system that he put into place.
Like a side effect of this election only. Amer, what about you? Can Biden still turn things around for you? Is there any chance you would vote for him?
So I'll disagree slightly with Saba and Tamara, because my answer is no. Under any circumstances, can he regain my vote, and I will be out there making sure that my voice is loud and telling everybody in our community that they should not be voting for him under any circumstances, because he will try everything. He will try everything. And let me say, unless he is like our favorite Palestinian Jesus and he can resurrect the 30,000 Palestinians that have died, there is absolutely no way. He has cheerleaded on this genocide from the beginning. He has lied about us. He has created an atmosphere of dehumanization that has not only killed 30,000 Palestinians in Gaza, but it has caused the shooting of 3 young Palestinian men in Vermont, the stabbing of a 6-year-old boy in Chicago, murdered 26 times, stabbed by his neighbors. And now just this last weekend, the stabbing of a young man in Austin, Texas, after a rally there, which I was speaking at, coincidentally. So there is no things that he can do to bring me back, and I think to bring most Arab Americans back, and I will be voicing that message very loudly. There is nothing. And they can do everything they want to blame us for the alternative if Biden loses. But guess what? They've been blaming Arabs and Muslims for everything happening in America politically for decades. That's nothing new to us. They can use us as a scapegoat as we want, but we will no longer be a political pawn for them. You know, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King warned us about the white liberals. They said they'll come to you and use you when they need to solidify their own power, but they don't really respect you. And so we are not going to deal with them. We're going to say to them no more, and we are not going to vote for them this time around.
Right. I have a challenge for you guys right now. I would like to end the show with a very short answer from each one of you on whether or not this crisis could be spelling, I don't know, the awakening of American voters with regards to the flaws within the political system in America right now, and if that could change in the near future. Saba, can I get your take?
Yes, I'm hoping that people start realizing that a change needs to happen. I'll keep this very short. I studied my Constitution in 8th grade, and I took AP US History. And if our 2 options right now is somebody that's violating the Constitution currently, or another guy that is saying that he's going to violate the Constitution, and it's Donald Trump saying he'll put a Muslim ban or anything like that, so that violates the First Amendment. If our 2 options are people that are so public about how they don't want to run like it's a democracy and listen to the people, then a change needs to happen. And if no change needs to happen, then people need to stop complaining that everything is so horrible here, and because they're not willing to change it.
Tamara, your take.
I think that my thoughts on this cannot be summed up in such a short, brief statement, but I will try. And I, like Saba said, I think it's really sad that we have deduced the American political system to choosing between the lesser of 2 evils, because this democracy was not built on the idea of choosing between a Republican and a Democratic, political affiliate, only to denounce and once again sort of silence the voices of the people. So irregardless of what political party any candidate, presidential candidate, is affiliated with, we need to continue to use our voices to uplift those who are oppressed and have had their voices taken away from them. And that starts with ending the occupation and standing in solidarity with people who have been oppressed by this imperialist regime.
Amer.
I think that in this election, we're probably going to see the highest number of votes in a presidential election for a third party that we've seen since 1992 and 1996, when Ross Perot was running for president, when he got somewhere from 18 to 20% of the vote. What has been unleashed in the American electorate by Biden's staunch support of the genocide in Gaza is a real anger. An anger not only that our government is supporting this thing and funding this thing, but as people become more aware and more educated about the history of Palestine, an anger that they've been being lied to for the last 75 years. And when you feel that kind of anger, that translates into action. So we're going to see major movements. They might not win any states, but we're going to see major movements for third-party candidates like Jill Stein and Cornel West this time around, because people cannot see themselves voting for the lesser of 2 evils, voting for one party over the other just because because one of them has to win, and hopefully that'll create a shakeup in the system. I mean, some might say the only thing worse than one-party system is a two-party system because there's some illusion of choice. But the truth is, both of these parties are genocidal when it comes to Palestine, and they have never seen us as Arab Americans or Palestinian Americans as full human beings.
Saba, Tamara, and Amer, thank you so much for joining us here on the stream today. And thank you all for tuning in. Please stay in touch online. Send us your comments, your ideas, your feedback. All you have to do is use the hashtag or the handle AJStream. Take care, and I'll see you soon.